Today's video has been sponsored by Helix Sleep.
Today we have the 2nd gen Cyclone back in the shop, and we are going to transform this sheet of 1/8 inch aluminum into the solution to all of our problems. Well, not all of our problems, but one very specific problem having to do with air temperature. Let me explain. The 2nd gen Cyclone has a 5.3 liter LS under the hood with a Harrop 2300 FDFI supercharger sitting on top. Now this thing makes some really cool noises, but it also makes heat. It does have its own cooling system. There's a reservoir here, there's a pump down below, there's some heat exchangers below the supercharger to take away the heat, and then that heat is rejected through this heat exchanger right there. However, we are having a slight issue where the IAT, or the inlet air temp, gets a little bit warmer than I would like. Part of the reason has to do with air ducting, and part of the reason has to do with air flow, I believe. So that's where this sheet of aluminum is going to come into play. We're going to build a duct basically, so as we're driving down the road, all of the air that goes through this opening here will be forced to go through the heat exchanger rather than being allowed to kind of go off to the side like that. So we also may throw an additional electric cooling fan into the mix because there are situations where I need the IATs to stay cool when the truck's not moving, i.e. sitting in the pits or the staging lane at the drag strip. So we'll start by building that, and then we'll figure out our fan situation. First things first, we got to pull the front end apart so we can actually access the heat exchanger.
If you're like me, you spend 2/3 of your life at work, but the other third of your life, which is a huge chunk, you spend in your bed sleeping. So why would you settle for anything less than the best? I just got a new mattress in from Helix Sleep, and I am excited to tell you guys about it because this thing is a game changer. As someone who works in the shop all the time, having a bed that actually helps me recover is fairly important. With our old mattress, I used to wake up feeling stiff and sore. About once a month, I'd get this real big knot in my shoulder just because it was kind of wore out. But honestly, the worst part about the old mattress was how hot it made us feel all the time. But switching to Helix has made all the difference. When I started shopping for a new mattress, I took the Helix Sleep quiz. It's super quick and actually tailors the mattress to your sleep style and body type. For me, I'm a side sleeper and tend to run a little hot, so they matched me with the Helix Midnight Luxe. And man, this thing is a perfect match. This summer, the weather's been pretty brutal, and after a hot day at the shop, I just could not get comfortable at night with our old mattress. But with a Glaciotech cooling pillow top on a no Helix mattress, it cools us off and actually keeps us comfortable throughout the night, which means no more tossing and turning. One thing I love was that the quiz nailed the choice for me. I just hate going to the big box stores to lay on all different mattresses, but with Helix, all you gotta do is take the quiz and they ship the mattress right to your door. And it's super easy to set up. They even give you 100 nights to try it risk-free. And honestly, my sleep has never been better. I can feel it with increased energy throughout the day, and it's nice not to wake up with a sore back all the time. So if you're tired of waking up sore and sweaty, or your old mattress is just plain wore out, do yourself a favor and check out helixsleep.com/LawrenceLT Tolman, or click the QR code that's up here on the screen to get 27% off site-wide, which is an exclusive offer for my viewers. So thanks to Helix Sleep for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to the build. Past me, we'll get back to the build. I'm gonna get to sleep because I'm tired. Now, the big challenge with a truck this small is just finding square footage to mount things. You guys have seen under the hood, there's just a ton of stuff crammed in there. And the same thing holds true for the cooling package. There's just only so many places you can put things. So here we have the engine radiator. This is what keeps the engine cool. This is the transmission cooler that keeps the transmission cool. This is a power steering cooler, obviously keeps that cool. And this is the heat exchanger for the supercharger.
Now, we are limited by the available space, and without doing some drastic surgery like cutting into the frame, this is pretty much as big of a heat exchanger as we could fit. Now, we obviously do have some improvements we could make in terms of airflow and ducting, but the alternative, which I have considered doing, is some sort of bed-mounted heat exchanger system. Like, find a radiator with some electric fans for, like, say, a Honda Civic or an Evo or some, compact car, and a big engine radiator might have more square footage than the heat exchanger that we have. And then I could kind of stick it somewhere back here, right on the very front of the bed. But then you got to run the cooling lines back there. You got to have a tank and all that. So not crazy about that idea for a quote unquote street truck. So we're going to try this first. This being improving airflow. So as the second gen Cyclone is cruising down the streets, the air is rushing in and then passing across the core, removing heat. However, again, constraints, we have this bumper. Now, I cut out the license plate opening, and that was like the best sort of natural looking way I could do this. The heat exchanger actually comes out like to here, and I didn't want to just cut this because I thought that would look not great. So I still kind of retained this sort of molded in area. Anyway, the problem is once the air passes through that, there's probably an 8 or a 9-inch gap before the air reaches the heat exchanger. So my thought, some of that air maybe hits here, piles up, gets turbulent, and then maybe gets pushed either around the side, down below, or up above. So what we're gonna do, I have this template I made forever ago, we're going to build a duct that comes from there, matches the profile of the bumper, so all the air that comes through will have no choice except to go through the heat exchanger. So there'll be a flat plate across the top, there'll be a scoop down along the bottom, and that one actually will probably come out beyond this just a little bit, and then we'll have one over here. So we need to build that from aluminum. And I know this is really out of character for me, but I'm going to paint it. I'm going to match those aluminum louvers that I have in the hood because OCD trumps not paint. All right, guys, I have never claimed to be a painter, and it shows. Like, I guess the last coat I did was much too light, and this looks awful. So I'm just putting a little bit heavier coat on. Still doesn't look awesome, but at the end of the day, this part is going to be mostly covered. I don't really care, but that's a bad paint job. I'm not afraid to admit it. Now this does kind of remind me of some of those Shelby Cobras, because I'm pretty sure that they used a very similar duct to, help guide the air through the radiator. And aside from the really splotchy paint job, I gotta say I'm really happy with how this whole arrangement turned out. And now the air has no choice except to go straight through there. I'm about to go out and test drive the second gen Cyclone and see if our little air ducting for our heat exchanger is actually going to do anything. Today is the perfect day for test drive because it's quite warm outside and it's been raining all week. So this is the first chance that I've had to actually test it and see if our upgrades are going to work. But I wanted to talk to you just real quick because I know the channel's been a little bit light lately in terms of content, frequency, and the type of projects that we've been doing. Where the ugly truck is done, more or less. The second gen Cyclone is done, more or less. And this is about the time that I usually launch a new project. But I wanted to explain why things have been a little bit sparse lately. And we're trying to do things a little bit different this year. And here's the story. I've been doing YouTube full-time since 2020. So this is my 5th year, which it doesn't seem like it. But the years have gone by, and every year I sit down and I think of all the things that I want to do. And like a lot of people, I don't accomplish everything on my list. But this year, we're doing something different. One of these plans that I've had rolling around in the back of my head for quite some time is finally getting the attention that it deserves. We started YouTube back in 2020. We got the shop in 2023, and that took up a ton of time. But at least now the shop's kind of rolling and it doesn't require so much of my attention. And so I'm focusing on the next big milestone for the channel. So we're not going to discuss everything, but I wanted to show you a quick sneak peek of some of the things that are yet to come. So this is our website, Tolman Performance. And as you can see, we've got a couple of cool shirts that are actually live on the website right now. But one thing you might notice over in the corner down here is going to be happening soon. When you guys may have the chance to own a piece of the Tolman Performance YouTube channel. I don't actually call the channel that yet. I'm thinking of switching the name. Right now it's just my name. But Tolman Performance is the brand that we've had kind of on the side for a while. But we're stepping things up. We are finally going to do something with that brand. We're excited to introduce some of those shirts, which maybe you just saw on there. But most importantly, there's that big one. So stay tuned for that. I think you guys will be very excited about it. But for now, let's go test drive that Cyclone and see if our work actually did anything. So the way we are going to measure if our upgrades were effective or not is by logging inlet air temperature. That's what the heat exchanger system effectively cools down. There's no gauge on the dash that shows IAT, so we just got our scanner hooked up, and that's how we will see what's going on. But first, we fuel up. TRX. And of course, traffic is at a standstill on the highway. We'll pick this up when we actually get some fuel. Alright, got her filled up with a good old corn juice, which is nice because it's, number one, less sensitive to higher IAT, and number two, it gives us more timing and more horsepower, the more ethanol we have. Now, the bad part about where I live is during the day there's just so much traffic, it's hard to find even a place to like cruise steady at like 45 miles an hour to see if any more airflow is going to go across that core or not. The good news is, as soon as we start moving, it seems that the IATs cool off fairly quick. I just wish they would cool off to a lower level. Again, 90 degrees. The other thing, according to the old information-o-meter, we're at 6,300 feet of elevation right here. My home is at like 7,200 feet of elevation. And the reason I point that out is just because up here at higher elevations, the air is thinner, which means there's less of it to be pushed across a core, like a radiator or a heat exchanger. Same thing, that's why the cars that race up Pikes Peak, which is right there, their aero is less effective, meaning their spoilers and whatnot. Less air, not good for anybody. See, this is what I mean, it's ridiculous. Just like the whole highway plugged up, traffic, construction. We'll find ourselves an opening here. All right, so a couple observations here. I don't know if we're entirely successful or not, but sitting at idle, IATs are 180 degrees. That's warm. But look at this. The IAT sensor is right there. It's not really in the path of the airflow. If you look at the port, it's kind of off to the side. The port is more where the injector is, kind of in that area. But so the sensor is reading accurately. But look at this. This is the water for the intercooler. Reads much cooler. The radiator, or the intercooler, heat exchanger, whatever, about the same. So I suspect that a lot of the heat that we're seeing is coming from heat soak around the sensor itself rather than the actual temperature of the air. I mean, it's not a good place for the sensor. Normally, like on an LSA, it's kind of in the stream of the airflow, where here it's just off in a corner, not a lot of air moving across it. I still want to get those numbers down, but just some observations. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Come back soon. Maybe you win a truck.